The grand hall shined like a world of gold. Expensive lights hung from the ceiling, soft music filled the air, and every corner of the place looked as if it was built only for the richest people in the world. Billionaires walked around in perfect suits, investors discussed profits with excited voices, and media cameras flashed non-stop, capturing every smile. Tonight was a big night. It was the night they were celebrating the success of an $800 million business event, a deal that would make the company more powerful than ever. Everyone looked proud, confident, and full of joy, as if nothing could ever go wrong in their shining world. But in one quiet corner of the hall sat a man who did not match the energy of the crowd. He was simple, calm, and almost invisible compared to the shining people around him. He wore a plain suit, not designer, not expensive, nothing fancy. He did not have bodyguards. He did not have people running around him. He just sat alone, watching the celebration with soft eyes, as if he had seen this world before and understood something the others did not. His name was not known to anyone there, and no one cared enough to ask. They were all too busy enjoying their success. As he sat there, a small smile touched his face, not a smile of happiness, but a smile of quiet understanding. People walked past him again and again, but no one noticed him. Some even assumed he did not belong there. And they were not shy about showing it. A group of young rich men, dressed in expensive suits, stopped near him. They looked at him with confused faces, then laughed among themselves. "Why is he sitting here?" one whispered loudly, making sure his voice carried. "He looks like a driver who accidentally walked inside." Another laughed. "Maybe security missed him. This area is for important people. He doesn't look important at all." The quiet man heard every word, but he did not react. He did not lift his head. He did not defend himself. He simply sat with calm eyes, as if their words meant nothing to him. The young men walked away laughing, thinking they had made a joke. They had no idea how wrong they were. Around him, the celebration grew louder. Speeches were being made on stage. The CEO stood proudly in the center, thanking the investors, praising the team, and talking about the future of the company. People clapped with excitement, believing this night was proof of their greatness. Everyone looked at the CEO as if he was the hero of the story. The media recorded every moment, and the cameras loved him. But the quiet man in the corner kept watching silently, his eyes steady, as if he was waiting for something. The narrator of this moment, if there was one, would have said only one thing. They did not know the truth. The man they ignored, the man they insulted, was the real owner of everything they were celebrating. But the hall was too busy to feel the truth. People were drinking, laughing, signing documents, and taking pictures. The rich young men kept joking with each other. Business leaders discussed future plans with loud excitement. Women in beautiful dresses moved from one table to another. And every person in that hall believed they understood the power structure of the night. They believed they knew who the important people were. No one imagined the quiet man sitting alone was the person they should respect the most. As the event continued, the quiet man's gaze remained fixed on the stage. There was no jealousy in his eyes. No anger. No pride. Only calmness. It was the calmness of a man who had seen much more than the others. A man who had worked in silence. A man who had built something amazing without needing the world to clap for him. He knew the truth of tonight, but he had chosen not to speak. Not yet. Meanwhile, something else was happening in the background. A few managers rushed behind the stage, whispering urgently. Papers were missing. A signature was missing. Approval was missing. And without that signature, the $800 million deal could not be completed. The CEO tried to stay calm in front of the media, but stress slowly started appearing on his face. He whispered to a board member, "Find the owner. We need him now." Those words changed everything. The board member froze. "The owner? He is here." "Yes, he is here tonight," someone said. "He came quietly. He didn't want attention." The room suddenly felt different. People looked around, confused. Investors exchanged worried glances. The media sensed something unusual. The young rich men stopped laughing, unsure what was happening. But the quiet man remained in his corner, calm and unmoved. No one knew yet. No one imagined. The man they insulted was the one they were desperately looking for. And when the truth came out, the celebration would not look the same. Tonight, the mask of the hall would fall. And every person would realize their biggest mistake. The noise of the party slowly faded in the background as the story turned toward the quiet man's past, a past no one in the hall cared to know, a past they never imagined would matter. But his story did not begin in luxury or power. It began many years ago, in a small room with weak light, where he sat at an old desk, working on ideas that no one believed in. When he first joined the company they were celebrating tonight, he was just a junior employee, young, hopeful, and full of dreams. He worked harder than everyone else, stayed late every night, and gave every idea his full heart. But the people above him never noticed. They were too focused on big profits and fancy lifestyles. To them, he was just another worker, someone easy to ignore. At meetings, he raised his hand politely to share ideas. He believed if he spoke with honesty, someone would listen. But every time, the response was the same. A senior manager would say, "Not now. Let the experienced people talk." Someone else would cut him off with, "You are too new to understand business." A few even laughed softly when he tried to explain something important. Their eyes always said the same thing, "You don't belong with us." He never fought back. Instead, he worked quietly and observed everything around him. He saw how the company wasted opportunities, how they treated people without respect, how they valued ego more than talent. His heart felt heavy, but it never grew bitter. He believed that one day, good work would bring good results. But the company did not appreciate him. They only saw him as a small, forgettable part of their large machine. Years passed. His ideas stayed ignored. His hard work stayed unseen. One evening, after another long day of being dismissed, he walked out of the office slowly. At the door, he turned to look at the building he had given everything to. He realized something important: he was never going to grow there. They would never see his worth. They would never treat him fairly. And with that quiet understanding, he resigned, without anger, without drama, without asking for a second chance. No one stopped him. No one asked why he was leaving. No one cared that a brilliant mind was walking away. But life had a different plan for him. Outside the company, he started working on his own dream. He had no big money, no investors, no special support. What he did have was a sharp brain, strong discipline, and a heart that refused to give up. He turned his small room into an office. The old desk became his command center. He built a tiny startup with two friends who believed in him. At first, the business struggled. They barely had customers. Some months, they couldn't pay the rent. But the quiet man never complained. He simply kept working, day and night, until little by little, things began to change. His ideas started working. Clients noticed his honesty. Investors liked his simple but powerful plans. People respected his calm nature. The tiny startup slowly grew. It bought one small company, then another, and then another. Each time, people wondered who the silent genius behind these decisions was. But he never showed his face in the news. He never took credit publicly. He just kept building, step by step. Meanwhile, the big company he once worked for was facing problems. They needed money, better leadership, and more support. They began selling small shares to survive, shares they thought were useless, shares they never imagined would matter. And the quiet man bought them. Not directly, but through the network of companies he had created. One piece at a time, he gained control. And one day, he became the majority owner of the same company that once laughed at him. But he never announced it. He never walked into the office to show power. He never tried to prove anything. He simply let life move forward, knowing someday the truth would reveal itself naturally. Tonight was that night. Back in the hall, the party continued with loud music and expensive champagne. The CEO acted proud, the investors smiled as if they ruled the world, and everyone believed they had built something great. But behind the stage, panic was rising. The missing signature. The missing approval. The missing owner. Managers whispered urgently. "Who is the owner? Why didn't he come to the stage? Why didn't he speak?" Someone finally said the words everyone feared. "The company belongs to a silent investor, someone we never met." The CEO's face turned pale. He had signed speeches for the event, but the most important person, the real owner, had not stepped forward. Without him, the deal meant nothing. And still, the quiet man sat calmly in his corner, watching everything. His past had shaped him into a man who did not chase noise. He had learned the value of patience when the world ignored him. He had learned the power of silence when people underestimated him. Tonight, those lessons were about to change everything. Because tonight, the world would finally discover who he truly was. The celebration inside the grand hall continued with shining smiles and loud applause, but a thin layer of worry had started to spread quietly behind the scenes. The guests did not notice it yet. They were too busy enjoying the music, taking pictures, and lifting glasses filled with expensive drinks. But the managers, the board members, and the people handling the deal knew something was seriously wrong. The missing signature. The missing approval. The missing owner. The heart of the $800 million deal was not beating. On the stage, the CEO kept giving his speech, but his hands were shaking slightly. He tried to look confident as the cameras recorded him, but stress was slowly growing inside his chest. He waited for the moment when the final document would be brought to him, signed and ready, but it never arrived. Instead, a worried assistant rushed to him and whispered something in his ear. The CEO's smile froze halfway, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We will continue shortly," he announced to the audience with a shaky smile. The guests clapped, unaware of the tension. The music continued, but something felt different now. A strange silence hid underneath the sound. Something was not right. Behind the stage, the managers argued in hushed voices. "We need the owner's approval. Where is he? No one knows. He must be in this hall. His name is on the list." Paper after paper was checked. Messages were sent. Calls were made. Everyone was searching for the one person whose signature mattered more than the CEO's speech, more than the investors' excitement, more than the entire celebration itself. But the quiet man remained seated in the same corner of the hall, his posture calm, his hands resting peacefully, his eyes observing the events like a man watching a play he already knew the ending of. He saw the stress building, the confusion rising, the fear moving like a slow wave through the people in suits. The guests began to pick up on the strange atmosphere. First, small whispers floated around the tables. Why did the speech stop? Is something wrong with the deal? Is there a problem with the documents? Then came the bigger whispers. They are looking for someone. Someone important. Who is he? The rich young men who had insulted the quiet man earlier were still laughing, but the laughter had become weak. They noticed managers walking fast, talking urgently. They noticed board members sweating. Something serious was happening, and even they could feel it. One of them joked nervously, "Maybe the owner ran away." The others forced a laugh, but their eyes showed worry. Meanwhile, the board member who knew the truth, the one who had seen the real name on the documents, was walking through the hall with a frightened look. He held a file close to his chest like it contained a secret that could destroy everything. "We must find him," he whispered. "Without him, the deal cannot be signed. Investors will walk out. The media will ask questions. The company will lose everything." Another manager asked, "What does he look like? Do we have a picture?" The board member shook his head. "No. He was always silent. Always private. He never wanted photos. He never came to events. Tonight is the first time he is here." This shocked the staff. "He is here. In this hall." "Yes. Among all these people. But no one knows who he is." Back on the stage, the CEO finally lost his patience. He stepped down, dragging two managers with him. "Find him," he hissed. "We cannot delay any longer. The investors are asking questions. The media is watching every move. This night will collapse if we don't bring him out." The search became intense. Managers scanned every face. Security checked corners. Board members whispered to one another nervously. And then, one man stopped suddenly. He stared across the hall at the quiet man sitting alone. Something inside him recognized the face. He had seen that face once, years ago, on a private document, the document that declared the majority shareholder. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. "That's him," he whispered. "He's been here all this time." The board member almost dropped the file. "Are you sure?" "Yes. That is him. The owner. The silent investor. The man who controls the company." Shock spread through the small group like fire. He was sitting alone. No one recognized him. People were walking past him all night. Then came the words that made everyone freeze. Some people insulted him. The board members looked at each other with horror. If the owner felt disrespected, he could cancel the deal. He could sell the company. He could destroy careers in one decision. But the quiet man still sat peacefully, as if he had no idea the entire hall was searching for him. As if he was just a simple guest who wanted to observe quietly. as if the huge power he held was nothing special to him. The managers approached him slowly, nervously, almost shaking. The young men who had insulted him earlier watched from a distance, confused. "Why are they going to him?" one whispered. And then they saw it. The managers bowed their heads respectfully. The board member spoke with trembling voice. "Sir, we need you on stage. The deal needs your approval." The entire hall went silent. Whispers spread like wind. "That man. He is the owner. The quiet one. We thought he was a nobody." And in that moment, the quiet man finally lifted his eyes. He knew the time had come. The truth was about to break the entire hall open. The moment the managers gathered around the quiet man, the grand hall seemed to freeze. The music kept playing softly in the background, but the atmosphere had completely changed. People stopped eating, stopped talking, even stopped moving. Their eyes slowly turned toward the corner where the man sat, the man they had ignored the whole night. For the first time, he became the center of the room, even though he had done nothing to ask for attention. The sudden silence felt heavy, like a giant truth was about to fall from the ceiling. The quiet man looked up calmly, meeting the nervous eyes of the board member standing before him. There was no fear on his face, no pride, no anger, only a gentle expression that made the board member even more nervous. The board member cleared his throat, holding the file so tightly his fingers had turned pale. "Sir," he said softly, almost whispering, we need you on stage. The deal cannot continue without your signature." Those words traveled through the hall like lightning. The guests exchanged shocked looks. Investors leaned forward in their seats. The CEO, standing near the stage, finally realized the truth. His face turned white. The rich young men who had insulted the quiet man earlier felt their stomachs twist. It was as if the world had suddenly turned upside down. The quiet man slowly stood up. The simplicity of his movement created more power than the CEO's entire speech earlier. He didn't rush, he didn't look around for attention. He simply stood, adjusted his plain suit, and nodded once to the board member. That nod felt like a command. It was a signal that the truth had awakened. As he started walking toward the stage, the crowd split apart like water making way for a ship. People moved aside with wide eyes, unsure whether to bow, smile, or stay silent. The quiet man walked between them with steady steps. His shoes made soft sounds on the marble floor, but in the silence of the hall, it felt like thunder. Every whisper around him carried shock. He is the owner. That simple man. He controls the entire company. We insulted him, oh my God. The rich young men who had mocked him earlier stood frozen, their mouths slightly open. One of them tried to step forward to apologize, but his legs felt weak. Another held his head in his hands, remembering the cruel words he had said. Their arrogance had destroyed their confidence in seconds. The CEO rushed down the stage toward the quiet man, trying to appear respectful. He forced a smile, but his voice trembled. "Sir, I did not know you were here. You should have told us. We would have prepared." The quiet man raised one hand gently, and the CEO stopped speaking immediately. The quiet man didn't need loud words. His silence was stronger than any speech the CEO could give. And that silence carried years of struggle, years of disrespect, years of being ignored. When he reached the stage, the quiet man turned to look at the crowd. Hundreds of eyes stared back at him. Some filled with regret, some with fear, some with awe. The hall felt different now, not bright and joyful, but tense with truth. A microphone was brought to him, though he did not ask for it. The lights shifted toward him, but he didn't look uncomfortable. He simply took the mic in his hand, his posture calm, his expression unreadable. He looked at the CEO first, straight into his eyes. The CEO lowered his gaze, embarrassed. Then the quiet man began to speak. "I came here tonight to watch," he said in a soft voice that echoed across the hall. "To see how far this company has come. To see the people who built it. To see how they treat others." His voice was gentle, but his words cut deeper than sharp knives. "I walked into this hall quietly," he continued, "and no one asked who I was. No one welcomed me. Some people decided I was unimportant because of my clothes. Because I did not speak. Because I did not try to show power." His eyes moved across the crowd, and many people lowered their heads. He continued, "The truth is, I have been silent for many years. I built my own path. And with time, I became the majority owner of the company you celebrate tonight." Gasps filled the room. Even though the truth was already spreading, hearing it from him made everything real. He placed the file on the podium. This company was built with hard work, he said slowly. But somewhere along the way, people forgot the value of respect. Some forgot that greatness does not come from money or clothes, but from character. Several investors nodded with deep shame. His voice grew softer but stronger in meaning. A man who speaks less is not weak. A man who dresses simple is not small. And a man who stays quiet is not invisible. He let those words sink in, touching everyone in the hall. Then he looked at the CEO, the man who loved attention the most. "I do not want power," the quiet man said. "I want change. And starting today, this company will respect every person who walks through its doors." The crowd stood silent, deeply moved. The board members offered him the pen for the final signature. He took it gently. With one single stroke of the pen, the $800 million deal was completed. The hall erupted in applause, but this applause was different. It wasn't for the CEO. It wasn't for the investors. It wasn't for the event. It was for the quiet man who had walked through fire, stayed humble, and returned as the strongest person in the room. He stepped away from the stage, his expression calm again, as if nothing grand had happened. But the truth was clear. The moment he stood up, the entire world around him changed. The hall remained silent for a few seconds after the quiet man signed the final document. Even the music paused as if the building itself recognized the importance of the moment. The investors stared, wide-eyed. The CEO swallowed hard, unable to speak. The young men who had insulted him earlier looked like they had been struck by lightning, their faces pale, their heads hanging low. They had spent the night thinking they were powerful, clever, untouchable, and yet here they were, humble, shamed, and caught completely off guard. The quiet man had done nothing to punish them, yet the weight of truth alone humbled every person in the room. He turned slowly toward the audience, his calm eyes meeting hundreds of startled gazes. For the first time, people realized the enormity of what they had overlooked. The man they had ignored, laughed at, and insulted was the one who held the ultimate power. He had not shouted. He had not demanded attention. He had simply waited, worked, and built a life of quiet patience. Now, that patience had transformed into recognition, respect, and authority that no one could ignore. Walking back toward the center of the stage, he addressed the crowd. "Tonight, you celebrated success," he began in a voice soft yet clear enough for everyone to hear. "But success is not about power alone. It is about respect, honesty, and patience. These are the things that truly make a company strong, and make a person truly important." He paused, letting the words sink in. Eyes that had been filled with arrogance now brimmed with shame. He looked directly at the two young men who had insulted him. They could not meet his gaze. They had laughed at him without knowing who he was. They had mocked him for his silence, for his simplicity, for the way he carried himself. Now, in front of hundreds, the truth was undeniable. "Money does not define worth," he continued. "Clothes do not define dignity. Silence does not mean weakness. And simplicity does not mean smallness." Every word was simple, but every word carried the weight of years he had spent being ignored, being underestimated, and being quietly patient. The entire hall listened in stunned silence, realizing that life had taught them a lesson that no speech or document ever could. The CEO stepped forward cautiously, finally finding his voice. "Sir, we did not realize." He stopped mid-sentence, embarrassed, as he realized the quiet man had already shown more strength and humility than he had in all the speeches he had given that night. The quiet man nodded once, acknowledging the apology without pride, without malice, only with dignity. He turned to the board members and staff. "From this day forward," he said, "this company will value people for their character, their honesty, and their ideas. Not for appearances. Not for loud voices. Not for arrogance." The staff nodded, some moved to tears. Many had worked under pressure, ignored or underestimated, and now they saw that the man who had quietly built the company valued them more than the flashy speeches of the night. Then, finally, he addressed the entire hall again, softly, but in a voice that everyone would remember. "You can insult someone today," he said, "but never forget, the person you ignore might be the one who changes everything tomorrow. Never judge anyone by their clothes, their words, or their silence. You never know who they might become." The hall was quiet for a moment, filled with awe, reflection, and shame. Then, slowly, a wave of applause began, not the shallow claps of polite guests, but genuine recognition of the man who had taught them an unforgettable lesson. The investors stood. The board members stood. Even the media cameras seemed to capture not the lights, but the power of the truth that had just been revealed. The two young men who had insulted him earlier could not applaud. They lowered their heads, filled with regret. They remembered every word they had said, every laugh, every gesture of disrespect. Now, those memories felt heavy on their shoulders. They had learned their lesson the hardest way possible, through humility, shock, and the quiet strength of someone they had underestimated. The quiet man stepped off the stage finally, back toward the corner where he had once sat unnoticed. People cleared the way for him, no longer mocking, no longer laughing, only bowing their heads in respect. He walked slowly, carrying no anger, no pride, only the calm assurance of a man who had endured and emerged stronger. His journey from ignored employee to the most powerful man in the room was complete, but he did not need the applause to feel victory. His silence, patience, and honesty had already spoken louder than any celebration. As he reached his corner, the room felt different. The air felt lighter, yet heavier with reflection. People who had been arrogant now understood humility. People who had valued appearances now understood character. The CEO realized leadership was more than speeches. The investors realized respect mattered more than money. And the world inside that hall would never be the same again. The quiet man finally sat down, closed his eyes for a moment, and exhaled slowly. The $800 million deal had been completed, yes, but more importantly, a lesson had been delivered to everyone in that room. The value of patience, the power of humility, and the truth that greatness is not always visible, but it is always powerful. And with that, the lights of the hall continued to shine, but the real light, the one of wisdom, respect, and quiet strength, came from the man who had waited, built, and revealed his true self only when the world was ready to understand.